So
Yeah.
there's a different kind of self-inflicted eustress that I think exists in tech that doesn't exist elsewhere, and it's maybe harder to manage.
And then your stint as a CTO came to an end one way or another,
Mhm.
and you then felt PTSD. Now, PTSD is something that, I mean, it's post-traumatic stress disorder, and typically it's used for people from the military, for example, who have been in really, I mean, your life is at risk every day kind of situations. What did that feel like for you? What in your world, what was PTSD?
Yeah, so I suppose one of the core kind of facets of PTSD in the clinical sense is intrusive kind of thoughts and memories and dreams, and I certainly had a lot of that. I would have dreams where I was completely crashing companies and people were blaming me for things that had happened, and I'd have dreams about the founders of the company that I'd left,
Mm-hmm.
and the investors. I, intrusive thoughts when I was speaking to other investors of, these investors will see me the same way because I
Yep.
left that company under a cloud, et cetera, et cetera. So certainly that kind of stuff lasted maybe a couple of years.
Wow.
And then, the other kind of more psychiatric stuff like just anxiety and being on edge the whole time and so on, that was
Mm.
definitely something that was amplified by that burnout. I think I probably had some of that before, being honest, but certainly it was almost like vindication of those worries about myself and my abilities that kind of stuck with me for quite a long time and kept me up at night, and
Mm-hmm.
spoiled relationships, etc., etc. So that was kind of my experience, and I needed some big wins and some big, reinforcement of my confidence to get me out of that, to get me into the next things that I did. But it was a hard process.
When you were in that period of PTSD, did you feel like a failure, or did you look back and say, I don't know what went wrong there because I know I've got the skills and I can't correlate me in that situation? Or did you literally walk away thinking, that's it, I'm a failure, I can't do this, I can't be a CTO?
Yeah, absolutely. The year that I spent after leaving that role, I couldn't trust myself with any work. I had a couple of interesting little projects that I did with friends that I thought would turn into startups that didn't really go anywhere, which further reinforced that I was no good at it. But I don't know. I don't think the PTSD lasted a specific length of time. I think there are definitely still elements that point me in directions sometimes that I shouldn't be going. But yeah, I think I certainly came out of that role resentful of having been put into a situation where I was kind of doomed to fail in a way, but mostly resentful of myself, A, for putting myself in that position, allowing myself to put myself in that position, and also for not being able to fix it and make everything right. I was 28 by that point, and
Yeah.
I thought I should have been able to fix everything.
Yeah. Still
Yeah.
young. We're going to move into your four stages of how to handle burnout later on.
Mhm.
But I'd love to know now. Now, clearly, you've now been a very successful CTO in a number of places, and you actually now run this thing called CTO Craft, right? So, in a sense, you're sort of top dog in the industry. You're now the role model CTO. Um, do you see the same things happening in the CTOs that you meet? Do you sense that there's CTOs out there who are burning out?
Yes, yeah, it's very, very widespread, especially in first-time CTOs, and especially in the startup world. I think a big part of that is that it's not as well defined a role as you might think, and it differs very much from company to company, which means it's very difficult for people coming into that role to fully understand what's expected of them and what to expect from themselves. So all they experience is the stress and the rush and the expectations and the stakeholders, all this sort of stuff. And just like me in that role, they don't have the inner or outer support to kind of deal with those things, and they don't have the
Mm.
resilience. but no, it's very, very widespread. I put it at, upwards of 50% of
Oh,
CTOs
wow.
who have been through that process of becoming a CTO, especially in startups, are probably burnt out or been quite far down the path before burnout. Yeah, but from
Listening to you, it reminds me of a really good book that I've read and listened to by Mo Gawdat called Solve for Happy. It's a phenomenal, his voice is mesmerizing. It's well worth getting the audiobook just to listen to his voice. But he was a very senior technology business leader in Google, similar, kind of a youngish age. He had a couple of some personal circumstances. I think his son was killed in a medical accident, for example, and he became very unhappy. And the big lesson that he said, well, I'm a mathematician. I should be able to solve for this. I should be able to understand why I am unhappy and sort of map my way out of it. His big conclusion was that when people become unhappy, it's because they set too high expectations and then they don't hit those expectations. And it's that gap more than anything else, more than a lack of money or a lack of a relationship or all those things. It's not hitting expectations that causes unhappiness. So I was hearing you, and you talked about CTOs who have these very, very high targets and these dreams about what the business will be, and they're very often, you hear them and you think, well, you're not going to build the next Google, Facebook, whatever. Drop your standards. And do you think that's possibly what's happening, that people are just not being realistic with their targets?